Hey guys, welcome to my video about Contiki tours. I'll be talking about my Contiki experience. I went on a European Contiki tour last year. It was a 25-day tour and it was great. So just a bit of a disclaimer, I'm talking from my own experience and from the experience I had of the staff on my tour. I can't speak on behalf of what every tour group is going to be like, because obviously every tour group's got different people running it and different people on the tour. So that's the first thing. The people on your tour and the staff from Contiki on your tour are going to be what makes your trip. We had, being a camping tour, we had a cook, we had our tour manager, and we had a bus driver. Our bus driver was phenomenal, a lovely man from the Czech Republic, and an insane driver. We couldn't speak more highly of him. My partner and I went on the trip together. The other two members of staff, so the cook and our tour manager, I found them to be quite rude and dismissive of people on the tour that we were on. They hadn't worked together before, which I think is quite it's a bit of a downer. You kind of want to go on a tour with people who know each other quite well and are more interested in you and you having a good experience, rather than two people on your staff essentially more interested in trying to impress each other. The only other downer I would say about the Contiki staff, not so much our coach driver but more our tour manager and our cook, is that they were really pushy towards the end of our tour, trying to get tips out of the people on the tour group. They were both Australians, and in Australia tipping isn't something that's expected, but because they were in Europe they felt like they were entitled to a share of that. Their approach was really just awful. They were trying to make people on the tour feel guilty for them having to work so hard over the past 25 days that they'd been looking after us. Newsflash, it's your job. You're meant to be cooking and you're meant to be organising things for us. They were just quite pushy. You know, it got to the trip from Calais back to Dover on the ferry and it was like, this is the last place you can get money out. And it's like, well, back off. We've already paid $2,000 and something to do this tour. You're getting paid a salary, you get free accommodation and you get your food for free and you're traveling. I'm not going to give you my money just because you think you deserve it. So that's a little bit of a downer. But onto the tour itself. So the camping tours, you are sleeping in tents. It sounds pretty hairy and it is a bit more of an adventure than if you were in a cabin, but hear me out, it has its perks. The campsites and the cabin accommodation are usually on the same block of land, and we got to walk past the cabins and see what the deal was, and I tell you what, we saved $2,000 I think per person for the booking of the tour, by doing it in tents. And the cabins, you're paying so much more for getting not much more in return. It's very basic. I think it was you know, a sink and a bunk bed and no heating or anything like that, so you may as well be in a tent. The tent situation, they're very small, they're just a little TP triangle kind of thing. You are responsible for setting them up and taking them back down at every campsite you go to. The campsites themselves, they're a campsite, you know, it's a bit of ground to stick your tent into. There's a shower block and a toilet block, so that's good. Facilities, they were always really clean. They were never, you know, I never felt uncomfortable using them, and the campsites felt very safe. But I would advise personally to have a bit of a shower buddy to go up with if you were going in the dark. The other thing about a camping tour, it is a bit more physically demanding. You know, you're getting up at 6 in the morning, you're tearing down a tent in the freezing cold. You need to be on the tour or traveling with someone, or be the kind of person who isn't easily frustrated, has a good sense of humour, and isn't going to get too down if things don't always go your way, and don't take things too personally. It's It's a very tiring way to travel, to be honest, because all you want to do is go to bed, or you know, you just want to get up in the morning and get on the coach, but no, you're hungover, you have to pull down your tent, and you have to do it with a smile on your face and not be a complete asshole to everyone around you. um that's another important thing about Contiki tours. You need to be considerate to the people around you and sensitive to their needs. For instance, you know, some people weren't huge party animals, other people were. You can't have the people who are out partying and the people who aren't out partying always clashing, because you're just going to have conflict on your hands for 25 days when you should be focusing on having a great time. You know, when you're coming back to your tent at night, try to be quiet. If you hear people coming back to their tent and they're drunk and you can hear that they're trying their best to get into bed, don't scream out, oh, you know, shut up, because you're just going to wake everybody else up. You just need to be a bit patient and understanding with each other and you'll be fine. As for like the tents, they're fine, they're tiny, you don't have much room at all. To be honest, I don't know how people who were traveling by themselves and were paired up with someone once they were on the tour to live with, I don't know how they did that, because you just have no space whatsoever. You have no privacy, you've got to get changed in these tents. And you know, there's so much that can go wrong. Like, there were people bringing girls back to their tents, and other people trying to sleep in the same tent. So, you know, people would be being kicked out of their tent midway through whatever it was that they were doing. Or there were instances where girls were brought back to tents and were throwing up everywhere, or throwing up on other people's stuff. So these are the kind of things you deal with when you are literally living on top of each other. Great. I've made it sound terrible. It's really not. Being a tour where most people are young and they're out for a good time and they want to party hard, people get sick. It's inevitable. You do need to give yourself the time though to make sure that you're eating properly, you're drinking water, and every couple of days you just need to have a night off the piss and let yourself feel better and recharge. My fiance and I, we aren't huge drinkers, but you know, we did have our nights where we partied and we had a good time, but balanced it equally with the days, you know, where we were just eating well, having an early night's sleep, getting a shower in, knowing that we had to get up the next morning and tear the tent down and move on to the next place. So the coaches itself, choose a coach seat that isn't anywhere near the toilet, because it stinks. We sat in the seats right in front. It had its pros and cons. You were really close to charging points for your phone, so you could just sneak on and get your charger in and get your phone going before everybody else came in. But every time we pulled up at a place, you just got this smell of human feces, and it was just unpleasant. The coaches are great though. Our coach driver maintained the coach beautifully. It was very clean. You know, you don't have a whole heap of space and you are on it for a lot of the tour. You know, it's a driving tour. You go from country to country by the coach. So I don't understand people who go on a Contiki tour expecting to be on a coach for 10 minutes and being in the next country. It takes 8 hours to get most places, and if you don't like that kind of travel, don't do it, okay? Because you're just going to hate life. Another thing about Contiki tours is, yes, you pay an initial cost for the tour itself. So that covers your transport, it covers the staff, and it covers a certain percentage of the food that you eat on the tour. But they also have these things called optional extras. And the tour that you go on is, it's pretty much formed around these optional extras. Contiki pretty much count on you doing these optional extras for you to have a good experience. For instance, they do excursions, like we went up to the top of Mount Jungfrau in Switzerland. That was an extra 110 euros each per person. There's dinner nights, which are usually 30 euros up, and the cheap optional extras usually don't get run because nobody goes for them. Like there was, I think it was like orienteering or something really random like that, and there just wasn't enough interest for it. But the thing is, 90% of the optional extras everybody wants to do and everybody does them, and the tour works around that. So say for instance 90% of the group are going up the top of the mountain, you can't afford it, you sit at the campsite by yourself and can't go into town because they're taking the coach to take these people where they need to go. Do you get what I mean? Like, if you're not going to be able to do these optional extras, you're going to be left out, you're going to be stuck at the campsite or spending more money on transport back into town. Like, that's the other thing. The campsites that you're staying at, they are not right in the center of the city that you're closest to. For instance, when we were in Rome, it was a solid 20-minute train ride into town. We were too confused by the whole train system to catch the train back at the end of the day. It cost us €60 to get a taxi back to our campground. And that's just the way it is. And if you're not going to do the optional extras, beg my pardon, you're just going to be left out. So you need to be budgeting. I think for every optional extra for one person to do them all on our tour, it would cost you $1,000 Australian to do everything. So you need to budget probably an extra grand on top of the cost of the tour once it's been paid off. The optional extras are great, not necessarily the best quality experience you could probably get if you were, trying to suss things out for yourself. The only other thing I'd say about Contiki is it really is like a tasting platter for Europe. You don't get enough time in each place to really sink your teeth in and experience genuine life in that city or country. Ideally, what I would have liked to have done in hindsight, I suppose, is done the Contiki tour and then still had another month of unplanned travel to go back to places that I really enjoyed. For instance, we stopped in Munich in October. Oktoberfest was on, so if you get a chance to go to Oktoberfest, you're going to do that rather than going and seeing Munich. So it kind of feels like a blur. It feels like I was never in Germany. I went to Oktoberfest, which was great and very German, but I don't know any more about Munich. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if any of this is making sense. I'm going to start wrapping it up now just because this video is getting a bit long. If anyone has any more questions or feedback or advice, I don't know, I don't need advice, you need advice. Please let me know. I'd love a thumbs up and I'd love you to subscribe if you felt so inclined. I shall be putting another video up on Tuesday, and I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I shall talk to you all soon.